Chapter 13, Operation Warp Speed and President Trump. I am not a politician. I have simply not yet surrendered my independent thinking process. Let me share my understanding of COVID-19 management in 2020. Some people have compared COVID-19 management to a world war. In a way, it was especially a war against the U.S. I would go further and say that the U.S. portion of the war started with something like Pearl Harbor on steroids. Charles F. Parker and Eric K. Stern commented that the pandemic was expected and criticized the White House by stating nobody knew there would be a pandemic or an epidemic of this portion. Nobody even knew anything like this before it happened. These comments are not fair. If preparing for a future pandemic of this nature were so easy, why did experts in 2023 state that at present the U.S. is no better prepared for another crisis than it was in 2020? This highlights how easy it is to blame others and feel good rather than analyze the truth. Imagine if the Japanese had not left after the Pearl Harbor bombing and released millions of their agents into the United States, agents who assumed American identities and infiltrated the U.S. police force, military, and politics. That is what happened with COVID-19. The attack came from overseas and recruited millions of asymptomatic carriers who were indistinguishable from healthy people. Neither the transmitter nor the receiver realized what they were doing. This is the zero of COVID-19 mathematics. The rationale of zero in serial multiplications is explained elsewhere in the book. It can be compared to millions of COVID Marys and COVID Harrys spreading the lethal infection rather than just one typhoid Mary, who caused a few deaths from typhoid in the early 20th century. Typhoid Mary was forcibly quarantined for the last 23 years of her life in North Brother Island. All these experts and critics either did not realize this or pretended not to in order to advance their biased criticisms. Blaming President Trump for this surprise pandemic attack would be like blaming Franklin D. Roosevelt for the Pearl Harbor attack. I have not seen or heard of anybody blaming FDR for the Pearl Harbor attack. There was more. Those who vaguely remember January and February of 2020 will recall that the media, Congress, the Senate, and the White House were consumed with the impeachment process. Nobody had time to think or talk about anything else. Despite having his own future presidency on the line, President Trump showed leadership and resourcefulness by dedicating a large portion of his time to addressing the health of Americans. Even during the impeachment, President Trump requested Congress to release emergency funding for basic needs. For the pandemic that really began in 2019, the Congress only released the emergency funds in March of 2020 and then went on to blame President Trump for not producing enough masks, ventilators, and other PPE items on time. The American Public Health Department has no authority to mandate that hospitals and other agencies stockpile such items. These are made to order through outsourced agencies. President Trump faced criticism regardless of which option he chose, whether it was closing Chinese or European immigration, mask, social distancing, lockdowns, or anything else. It is frustrating to see that half of the experts blame him for one side while the other half blames him from the opposite side.